Hello and welcome. Wow, that is called a stress test. Right in the middle of trying to do all this, my batteries in my mouse died, and I couldn't use the darn mouse. Well, thanks for being patient and waiting for us. Hopefully, you'll all be here soon on the right webinar. There we are. Okay, we got everybody here. Hallelujah. My sincere apologies. I just don't know why. I had to create 3 different webinar links, but we're here now, so let's get started. It's just not working right. It's showing 0 viewers, yet they're showing 12 attendees. So I guess it's loading in for each and every one of you. Still don't have a real handle on this system yet. Haven't used it, I guess, enough. But anyway, thanks for being here, and we'll look forward to moving forward with no further delays. So today we've got a lot of really great information, and I just hope I'm not so flustered that I forget something. But in terms of updates, we've got some major things happening. And again, I want to tell you guys, gals, but I've just been asked not to because the loose lips sink ships, and it's just amazing how things get out there. But we are making major progress, and you're going to see some of that in some of the materials that we're going to review today. Had a wonderful conversation with Mr. B yesterday, and also with Eddie. And we have some good things happening in Australia and moving forward in great strides there. I do want to do a little bit of an update on, and thanks to you. So I'm going to share screen, and we're going to take a look at what's happening there for me, and hopefully will be soon happening for you. All right, so we should be here now, and we'll just pop in to Mr. Sovereign. And if you wouldn't mind letting me know if you are seeing this, Kenny, I'd appreciate it. All right, so I'm still getting more members sending in payments, so I'm just going to go here to click pending payments, and you'll see one here for $20. And the process is real simple, guys and gals. Approve the payment. Now, unfortunately, Tom didn't put in the proper information, but since I know it's Tom, and we go ahead and confirm the approved payment, and we're all set there. If we go ahead and take a look at approved payments, you can see there's right now 24 approved payments, and if we go to our dashboard, you can see that I've received $200. Now that's certainly not too shabby for a $2.50 capital outlay. Viewing the personal direct referrals, there's 2 in here that are marked free that Bruce has gone fishing. Well, it actually is sponsored under Lawrence. I was told that these were going to drop off, but they haven't. So 16 people are the resultant of $200, and I really haven't done anything because of the move. So I'm going to get back at it and start promoting it again. Things are ready to really happen for that little program. So see you soon there. The next thing I want to go to is our Financial Hope site, and look at the 2014 news, and it'll load in just a second. Here it comes. All right. Interesting overview from the Sovereign Man, and so let's take a quick look at this. Whoever is winning at the moment will always seem to be invincible. Wow, what a true statement. I mean, don't we all have this fear that we're never going to see the results that we've been working for so hard for the last 5 years? And it just seems like the whole system has been fighting against us and delaying us and doing all kinds of nasty stuff. And so it seems like they're invincible. But having said that, wise words indeed, as they aptly describe the misguided confidence in the US dollar and the US economy. The Society for the Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication System, called SWIFT, and I never knew that was an acronym, which helps manage the global banking system, tells us that the US dollar settlement accounts for the vast majority of global trade. As well as Orwell suggests, many people take it for granted that just because the dollar is in the lead today, it will be that way forever. They couldn't be more wrong. There's been a dominant reserve currency for thousands of years. It's called gold. The Byzantine Empire's gold solidus was the world standard for centuries. When they hit the reset button in the 11th century, it became the gold hyperpyron. Eventually, this was abandoned for Venetian ducats. Soon, Spain's silver pieces of 8 became the dominant reserve standard to the point where they were still legal tender in the United States until 1857. By the 1860s, the British pound sterling was the world's primary reserve currency, and over 60% of the world traded was settled in pounds. Reserve currencies come and go. So will the dollar. This is nothing new. It's bad enough that the U.S. debt is greater than any other nation's in the history of the world, or that the dollar is rapidly debased by a tiny banking elite. But really, what's really driving the nail in the dollar coffin is the U.S. government's continued appalling arrogance, particularly in bullying around foreign banks. Just one tiny example is the U.S. government's $10 billion threat against French bank BNP Paribas, which may even include criminal charges. BNP's bank in Geneva stands accused of financial dealings with Iran. Never mind that it's perfectly legal for a bank in Switzerland to do business with Iran. Iran, after all, is one of Switzerland's largest trading partners in the Middle East. The issue is that BNP violated a 2012 executive order from Barack Obama, number 13622, that requires non-U.S. companies to enforce U.S. sanctions. The arrogance is overwhelming. This isn't even actual law. It's just an executive order, a royal decree from King POTUS, first of his name. And even if it were an actual law, on what possible grounds could the U.S. government claim jurisdiction to regulate foreign banks? None. But this doesn't stop them from doing so. FACTA is another great example. A seismically destructive law passed in 2010 that mandates all sorts of U.S. compliant requirements on foreign banks. The only reason the U.S. is able to get away with this is because the dollar, and hence the U.S. banking system, is so important to their global business. Well, the world's patience has run out, and things are starting to change. The Chinese government has rapidly loosened controls over the renminbi to increase its reserve status and compete with the dollar. And the rest of the world has quickly adapted to that opportunity. The proof is clear. According to SWIFT, Chinese renminbi is now the second most used currency in the world for global trade settlement, putting it ahead of even the euro. In London, renminbi trade last year surged 50% to 25.3 billion per day, and there's every indication that this growth will continue. Singapore's central bank is now offering overnight renminbi liquidity. Can't pronounce renminbi. Russian companies are preparing to pay for trade in renminbi. Even the World's Bank, IFC, just issued its first renminbi-denominated bond. It's happening, folks, and based on the data, it's completely obvious to just about everyone but the U.S. government and the U.S. people. I was surprised to see an article in the Financial Times banking intelligence subsidiary, The Banker, entitled "The U.S. Dollar's Domination is Coming to an End." Shocking! This reality has become obvious to just about everyone except for the U.S. government. And seeing it reminded me of another great Orwell quote. We have now sunk to a depth at which restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. Orwell was right. Fortunately, intelligent people can choose to embrace this obvious reality and benefit from it rather than ignore reality and be devastated by it. And we're going to be talking all about that today. So really great information to share with you. Now, we do have some other great information here. I have a new contact who found me somehow. You can read the story. I'm not going to take time to read it today. His name is Joseph Harvey. He lives in North Sumatra, Indonesia. And so I've done a little overview here because I think it was apropos, because he was asking some very pertinent questions regarding the And Thanks to You program, and I kind of outlined it, and I think it would be good for everybody to read and hear what I have to offer. I really urge you, I implore you, in fact, I make it mandatory. If the U.S. government can make it mandatory, Gary Holmes can too. I make it mandatory that you read this article on the timeline of the Rothschild dynasty. Got to read it, got to internalize it, got to make it a part of you guys and gals. This is so important to what we're doing. We have the only alternative solution to this timeline. And we have it in place now, and we're not using it, which is tragic. We can solve the world's entire problem if we're just out there telling everybody, come see, come see, come saw. All right. Certainly take a look at these neat little Sovereign Man overviews on food and water for China. What a fabulous opportunity that you and I have to offer this protocol solution to the world and to China. And we can ultimately buy up all the farmland around the planet and all the fresh water around the planet and be the major sellers of farm produce and water to the world. We have that power. And so what are we doing about it? Well, I know Anthony's doing everything in his power to buy as much Australian farmland as possible, and I'm there helping them. And I would hope some of the other Australian members are going to be actively looking at the farmers out there in foreclosure, and if they are foreclosed on, can't buy the darn property using the protocols. We've just got to get going on this stuff. It's huge, absolutely huge. So there's the latest updates. Take a look at them. And today, I thought I was already organized, and then this fiasco with the links went crazy on me, and I created so many. So if we look at the recorded webinars, we can see what we're going to cover today. So let's take a look there. Come on, open up. Hopefully everybody's seeing this. So here we have the Daily Bell. We're going to look at these two articles, and then we're going to go into the hotel story corollary and the real estate equity protocol capture page. So great stuff. Let's get started. And so I will click on this link, and hopefully it will bring us to where I want to go. And no, it did not. Okay. So that link is dead. Anyway, I thought it was there, but I guess it's so old we're going to have to go back to Financial Hope and bring it in from there. In fact, let me just do this. I'll bring up this link. Here we go. Okay. I'll put this up on the website as well. Saturday, October 30th, 2010. Now, remember, the first article that we did on Tuesday's webinar with our Australian friends was the 2008 overview, and that stood for 2 years, I should say. And then in 2010, the Daily Bell published an interview with Dr. Lawrence White, professor of economics from George Mason University, on October 24th, 2010. Now, one of the questions the interviewer asked was, please comment on real bills and how they worked. So in the best light, this professor of economics goes on to say, in his answer, Professor White gave the following example. Joe the baker buys flour from Bob the miller and gives a bill promising to pay $1,000 in 90 days. So Antel comes along and says, wait a second, let's clarify. Number one, there are several problems with this description. In actual fact, it is not Joe who issues the bill, but Bob. So already this professor of economics doesn't know what he's talking about. The bill is drawn by Bob on Joe, who must accept it before it can have any value. In common parlance, Bob bills Joe. Professor White puts the cart before the horse in confusing the concept of a bill with that of a note. A bill originates with the payee. The note originates with the payer. Now, this is no hair splitting, folks. The difference is very important. A note is evidence of debt. A bill is evidence of value to be added. There is no loan, no lending, and no borrowing involved in Joe's purchase and Bob's sale of the flour. None whatsoever. The transaction cannot be understood, I should say, except in the context of merchandise maturing into the gold coin that only the ultimate consumer can release. I'm going to say that again. The transaction cannot be understood except in the context of merchandise maturing into the gold coin that only the ultimate consumer can release. A process that makes the relationship between Joe and Bob one of coordination rather than one of subordination. If anything, Bob could be considered the subordinate. Joe is one step closer to the boss. That's the consumer. And he's the one that gets the gold coin first. He dispenses bread that is in general demand. Everybody eats bread. Flour that Bob dispenses is only in special demand. What do they mean by that? Special demand. Well, it's only going to be bakers that are going to want the flour, so that's a specialty. But bread is general demand because everybody wants bread. So it's not as liquid as bread. If liquidity, product is defined as how far removed from the consumer gold coins they are. It is preposterous to suggest that Bob is the lender and Joe is the borrower. The two men, I should say, are partners in a joint enterprise made ad hoc in order to provide the consumer with bread. Their role is like that of two blades of a scissor. Neither can do the job by itself. This is not to deny that Bob extends credit to Joe, but extending credit is not the same as lending. To suggest that Joe is in debt to Bob as a result of borrowing is entirely fallacious. Joe is in a strong position. The bill he has accepted can circulate as money for 90 days. The note of a mere borrower cannot. All right, so number 2, Professor White goes on to say that Bob the miller can either wait 90 days for his money or he can go to a bank and sell his bill. The banker will pay Bob something less than $1,000 because he takes interest due for the 90 days out of the proceeds. Okay. Again, there's several problems with this description. The main one is the suggestion that banks are necessary for real bills to be effective and useful. This representation makes facts stand on their head. The question whether bills come first or banks is not a chicken or egg problem. We have the facts certified by Ludwig von Mises, who is definitely no friend of the real bills doctrine, that bills did come first. Moreover, we have it on the authority of Adam Smith that real bills do circulate as money on their own wings and under their own steam. By contrast, legal tender banknotes circulate by virtue of the strong arm of government. It would have been more correct for Professor White to say that Bob, if he wanted cash, read gold coins immediately, that he would go to the bill market and discount his bill. IEC. Read, exchange it for gold coins at a price discounted by the number of days remaining to maturity at the prevailing discount. So what do we do here that's different? Let's just think and ponder for a moment. When we do a discount, we always charge in advance of 125%, so you still get the full 100%. See how perfect the system is? All right, let's continue. I repeat, the $1,000 face value of the bill does not represent debt. And the discount does not represent interest on debt. Rather, it represents value to be added to the underlying merchandise, and it is incumbent upon Joe the baker to accomplish this feat. Time preference has nothing to do with it. The height of the discount rate is governed by considerations entirely different from those governing the height of the rate of interest, as we shall presently see. Now, confusing the two rates is the worst mistake economists have ever made and are continuing and still making. Number 3, Professor White condescendingly admits that bills, well, they were still tolerated, used to command a low interest rate because of their low default risk. This remark confuses the issue even further. Risk of default has nothing to do with the height of the discount rate, which is determined not on a case-by-case basis, but rather across the board. In fact, the risk of default is so low that it can be taken to be 0. I ask you, how many bakers go bankrupt for each banker that does? Now go look up how many banks have gone bankrupt on the internet last year. Okay, to understand what determines the height of the discount rate as opposed to the rate of interest, we've got to go out to the saver. We have to go not to the saver, but to the consumer. The height of the discount rate is determined not only by the propensity to save, but by the propensity to consume. Let me restate that. The height of the discount rate is determined not by the propensity to save, but by the propensity to consume. In more details, the discount rate varies inversely with the propensity to consume, whereas the rate of interest varies inversely with the propensity to save. Now, I can remember talking with Mr. B, and the court system that he was being run through demanded how he could make 400% profit on anything. Banks don't pay that kind of interest. And that's where the court's mindset was. It has nothing to do with saving. It has nothing to do with interest earned by putting your money in the bank. It has everything to do with making a profit. And so if you have a dozen eggs and you sold each egg for $1 and they only cost you a penny, is that more than 400%? What about what I just showed you with my And Thanks to You program? I put $2.50 in and I have $2 out. What kind of rate of return is that? Can anybody figure that out and kind of type it in there when we come back to the Q&A section? You see what I'm saying? You can easily get these kinds of rates of return in commerce, but you can't get rates of return like this in finance, where we're borrowing money in debt, or we're saving money in the bank at 0 interest earnings, or 0.01, or whatever stupid rate that they've got going on right now. Okay? So, a higher propensity to consume means that Joe the baker experiences increased cash flow. Really, an increased flow of gold coins. It prompts him to get rid of the gold coins by prepaying his bill outstanding, rather than by buying his own bill back, which may have been endorsed and passed on a dozen times and would hardly be possible to track down. He simply goes into the bill market and buys any bill with 3 good signatures with his gold coins. Pay close attention to this, folks. The demand for bills has thus created making the bill price rise. This means that the discount rate is lower as a direct result of the increase in the propensity to consume. Conversely, a fall in the propensity to consume decreases the demand in the bill market, as retail merchants have a reduced cash flow and fewer gold coins to get rid of in prepaying their bills outstanding. The decreased demand shows up as a lower bill price, or what is the same, a higher discount rate. Our argument clearly shows that the credit represented by real bills has absolutely nothing to do with the propensity to save. The source of commercial credit is not savings. It's consumption. It's called commerce. It's not called finance. Got to know the difference. Go back to the earlier webinars and read the definitions of finance versus commerce. The reason why real bills have been and are badly misunderstood by most students of credit is a poor understanding of gold itself and the second best thing to it, which is real bills. Undoubtedly, the next best thing to gold is the bill of exchange representing merchandise in most urgent demand that is moving to the ultimate gold-paying consumer apace and will be purchased by him before the season of the year changes, causing fundamental changes in the character of consumer demand. That is, in not more than 90 days. Now, is this 90 days got to be etched in stone? Absolutely not. Some bills are payable immediately. Some bills have longer time windows. It depends on whatever the transaction requires. The process of supplying the consumer is a maturing process of merchandise, which is parallel to the process of real bills maturing into gold coins. The consumer is fickle, and changes in his taste are unpredictable, to say nothing of hers. The army of merchants and producers must stand on their toes to serve consumer demand efficiently and instantaneously. It is the gold coin that makes the consumer king. If you removed gold coins from circulation, as European governments started to do exactly 100 years ago, then merchants and producers would start serving another sovereign. From then on, they would rather serve the issuer of legal tender banknotes. This change in the person of sovereign corrupted the economy and caused an upheaval in the wealth of nations. Now, please, you've got to go and read that timeline by the Rothschilds. Thank you, Anthony, for sending that. That is such a powerful tool that we have here to help people understand what was done by the bankers to the governments and how they've gained control of us through their finance system. Professor White says that real bills were an important source of business credit in the 19th century and a major category of assets in a typical bank portfolio. This sounds as if our grandfathers lived in backwater, not realizing that there are other more appropriate sources of commercial credit. But the fact is that it was not progress or enlightened thinking, but rather chicanery, malice, and vindictiveness on the part of governments and the banking system controlled by the Rothschilds that eliminated real bill circulation. Read that article. Two dates stand out. Number one, in 1909, first the French government and then, hard on its heels, the Imperial German government introduced legislation making the note issue of their central banks legal tender. See, previous to that, it wasn't. This paved the way towards financing the coming wars with credit. And who provided that credit? The Rothschilds, both sides. How evil is that? Number two, in 1918, the victorious Entente powers decided not to allow the spontaneous return of real bill circulation, for they were afraid of multilateral trade. Well, of course. It was already proven to work, and now they don't want to bring it back because they don't want Germany to win or to benefit. They would have liked to continue the wartime blockade of Germany, as it was not possible to do in peacetime. They had to settle for something less, replacing multilateral with bilateral trade. In this way, they hoped to control German imports and exports. In effect, this was a relapse from indirect exchange to direct exchange, alias barter. The collapse of the international gold standard was a consequence of this malicious and vindictive decision. The gold standard could not survive the destruction of its clearinghouse, the bill market. The world is still suffering from the consequences. There is no such thing as structural unemployment, while real bills financed multilateral trade. The elimination of real bill circulation has destroyed the wage fund, out of which workers producing merchandise that will not be exchanged for the gold coin of the consumer for up to 90 days can be paid. Structural unemployment plus a periodic outburst of horrendous worldwide unemployment is the result. The 1930 episode was blamed on the gold standard. This argument is exploded by the present episode, which in the fullness of times will be far worse than the earlier episode. Real bill circulation, as well as the gold standard, have been eliminated, yet unemployment is still with us. So another lie. No one's asking the question, how is it that the removal of these arch enemies of government omnipotence has not removed the threat of deflation, depression, and unemployment? I shall continue my comments with a concluding article entitled More Real Bell Fallacies. All right, so you've got to go over this until you internalize it. We're going to handle this last one on next Tuesday's Aussie webinar because it's quite long, because I've got more important information I want to share with you, but you can certainly read through it, and the more times you read through it out loud, buddy up with somebody, read it together, talk about it, and literally put yourself into questioning each other of the validity of all of this. All right, so the next thing we're going to cover is the hotel story corollary. So let's take a look at that. Now, one of the things that's been difficult for all of us, I am nobody different than you, is, come on, no, I did that. Hotel story, there we go. Is the ability to not only understand it yourself personally, but to explain it to others. This hotel story corollary is a great lead-in. Look at this. A correspondent for hotelinfo.biz shows up at a hotel to do a review of the hotel, the facilities offered, and the quality of the rooms. Now, how often does this go on? Well, I mean, if you look at TripAdvisor.com, Hotel.com, they all have these websites outlining the hotels. They get obviously outside third-party information from you and I who've stayed there, but they also have people going in, taking pictures, and doing all this neat stuff. So he explains this to the hotel manager, and the hotel manager says, "That's great, but for you to review the hotel and have the ability to look at the rooms and the facilities, I'll need a $300 security deposit from you to ensure that if anything is missing or damaged, I can repair or replace and make whole to the hotel." Correspondent says, "Well, that's an unusual request, but as long as I get my $300 back when I leave, I'll do that." So the correspondent gives the hotel manager the $300, and the hotel manager gets one of his staff to escort the correspondent around the hotel to do his review. Well, immediately the hotel manager quickly runs next door to the catering company and pays them $300 for the last catering job. The catering company runs next door and pays the farmer's market where they got foodstuffs for the catering done. And the farmer's market runs next door to the doctor's office and pays the doctor $300 for the visit that was owed to him. And so then the doctor goes to the hotel and says to the manager that his mother-in-law is coming to visit, and I'd rather have her stay at your hotel than with me, and pays the hotel manager $300 for 3 nights. And about that time, the correspondent returns to the hotel manager and says he's evaluated the hotel rooms and the hotel, and they all look great. Now, can I please have my $300 back? And the hotel manager gives them the $300 and says, "Thanks for the review." And life goes on. What just happened here? Now, I really want you to take a look. This is up on the website, and I want you to take your own time, and I want you to answer these questions, and I want you to send me your answers, please. What just happened here? Let's go over it again. The correspondent gives the hotel manager $300 as a deposit. He puts it in his pocket, and he runs next door, and he pays the catering company for catering. And so then that person has a $300 debt, and he runs next door, okay, and pays off the foodstuffs that he purchased from the farmer's market. And the farmer's market goes and pays off the doctor with the $300. Do you see how that $300 was never, ever really spent in the effect that somebody got change for it? It was just that same $300 moving from place to place to place to place to place, and finally ended back up in the hotel manager. And so does it look like it was ever really spent? No, it doesn't. And that's called commerce, folks. How does this relate to what we have in place? Have you ever participated in something like this? Tell me your stories. I have. Uh, Back in probably the early 80s, I was in the music business, and I was blessed to be doing quite well. And I used to get the screen up. Okay. Not seeing the text. Okay, well, hopefully you're seeing the text now. All right. As I was saying, I was at the Simcoe Fair. Simcoe Fair was about 10, 12 days long. And you know how you go to fairs and you see all kinds of different things? Well, if it's a fall fair, there's usually a lot of farmer stuff going on, but still there's a commercial side of things where people bring in their wares because the farmers have now got money because their harvest is in. And so we went and took our organs and pianos and musical instruments, and the Dominion Therapy Chair Company took in their vibrator chairs and vibrator pads and vibrator machines for relaxation purposes, because obviously these farmers had had a long haul through harvest and now wanted to sit back on their easy chair with their vibrator pad and their vibrator personal device and just massage themselves silly until they had to start planning again. Okay, so you see how the thing starts to go, where we get these fairs. Well, I've been a part of that for years. In fact, I got most of my business from the start of the fall fair season, which ended started at the end of August and went right through to do all the fall fairs to the middle to end of October, and then all of December I did mall displays right up until Christmas Day. All right, and I did 80% of my business in that 4.5, 5-month period. And so if I didn't work 6, 7 days a week, I didn't survive the rest of the year. That's the way the music business is. All right? So while I'm at the fair, you get tired of standing all day, so you go and you start talking to the people around you and all the other types of displays and the people that run them. And so I got to be friends with the people across the aisle. And so I went across and I sat in their chair. And obviously they're giving me a massage with their little handheld vibrator thing. And I'm sitting in this vibrating chair and the rollers are running up and down my back. And I'm saying, wow, this is fantastic. And so they're listening to me playing the organ and the piano and the guitars. And so they're seeing a lot of people buying musical instruments from me. And they're getting quite excited about having a musical instrument of their own. And so during that 10-day period, we started bartering back and forth. And so it ended up that they got a piano, they got a guitar, and a stereo, because I was in the stereo business, and something else. And I got a chair pad, and a hand vibrator. And they paid me a little cash, because the piano was a little more money than what the chair and that totaled up. But the point is it was exactly what we're talking about right now. Okay, it was a barter system, but we also used script. All right, we also had the ability to advance and take over that 10-day period and calculate out what it is we could afford to buy based on what we were going to end up with at the end of that 10-day period in terms of sales. Could I afford to pay a difference? All these neat things. So if you have a story like that, I want to hear about it. Okay, I know Bruce does fairs all the time with his tasty little condiments. He sells these neat, can't even think what they are, spreads. Bruce, Skype me. Tell me what it is you sell. I know that you're doing it at fairs and displays. And so I'm sure he's had a situation similar to that. How can this help you with your existing business, whatever it is you do? And what if every business had documentary funds? Every business. Isn't this a similar situation? There is no question that documentary funds are lawful currency with a country who is a member of the United Nations. No question. We have legal, but more importantly, lawful tender. Now, what if every business had BVK to trade with? Isn't this a similar situation? You can use BVK to do business with each other. Get more members who will do joined in and use BVK. And what do you have to do to get documentary funds? You can use Zcash and chips to get documentary funds. You can use BVK to get Zcash and chips to get documentary funds. How do you get BVK? How did you and I get documentary funds and then BVK? Isn't this what Antal Fiketty is talking about with trade fairs? Whoever is winning at the moment will always seem to be invincible. The bankers seem to be invincible, but they're not. Chip dip and rubs, and you're not seeing the screen. My goodness. What happened to the screen? Let's just see. Google Hangouts. All right. So now you see me. And let's see if we can go back and find what we were just looking at. Share screen. Okay. Hotel corollary. All right. So hopefully you're seeing it now. Tell me if you are, Bruce. Anyway, it's up on the website. You can go download it, and we'll go from there. Answer these questions, send them in, and let me know that you're on side. You understand what's going on here. This is so important because all I'm doing is a talking head. I finally realized that if I don't get your input, I don't understand where you're at, I can't help you. You've got to start communicating with me, and these are good questions, and if you can answer these questions to the best of your ability and let me know where you're at, then I can really help you. We've got to do something about the lack of involvement of the world with our protocols. And it starts with us. We're the leaders. We've got the BVK, we've got documentary funds, and by the way, those of you that do have documentary funds, you can easily get involved with this protocol, and I've been meaning to talk to you about this. If we go over here to discounting WAPN and IBO. And so those of you that have a WAPN and IBO kicking around and you don't know what to do with, go to chips-corner.com, discounting WAPN and IBO. It's on the red box section. Discounting WAPN and IBO says beneficiaries of a WAPN and IBO may contract with the International Energy Corporation, IEC, a Texas DBA of Nevada, USA Corporation, to have that firm discount WAPNs and IBOs by arranging for the execution of the payment protocol of the International Bill Exchange by IEC contracting for a major world private bank to undertake buy-sell transactions related to senior financial instruments. So it's pretty simple to do. No money out of pocket. To request to have a WAPN and IBO discounted, send an email to iecdiscount@change2100.com specifying the identification and PIN for the instruments and request that arrangements be made for the proposed discounting. So please, folks, if you do have a WAPN and IBO, Kenny, and I know there's a couple of others that are on the call that do as well, and I can't think of their names, but the point is that send this email not to IEC Discount, but send it to me with not just the information that they request here, but what you're going to do with the money, because they're just not going to give you $500 million. You know what I'm saying? Tell me what you're going to do with it. Have a little business plan in there. Send it to me, and then I'll forward it on, and I'll send it in a IEC Discount on your behalf. You'll get a copy of it, and I will get to know that it's been done. Okay? That's the important thing. All right, so if we're still not seeing the screen, I still don't know why this thing isn't working properly, but just know that discounting a WAPN and IBO is up on the site. And last but not least, the last document we're going to look at is the real estate capture page. And let's see if I can get showing the screen now. Google Hangouts, share screen. Let's try again. All right. There we go. All right. So, Bruce, are you seeing this screen now? Do you have a home in foreclosure with over 40% in equity? Now remember, this is a capture page, folks. The capture page, you can create whatever you want. This is just the wording. It's been approved, so we can go ahead and use it. Do you own a property with over 40% equity in it and would like to access your equity and make it work for you? Do you have a paid-for property of any type that is costing you in property taxes year after year and you don't get anything out of it? We've got an actual situation right now where property has a business building on it that's really not a functional building. It's just kind of sitting there, land value $800,000, paid for, and the guy pays property taxes year after year after year, and for what? He doesn't use the property, he doesn't use the building, and it's costing him money. So he's super excited about using this protocol to take access and get involved and get the equity to work on his behalf. Now, you may not own a property. Okay, so you're not seeing it. Well, you're hearing it, and then you can go see it. If you don't own a property, that's okay. If you're not in a foreclosure, that's okay. If you don't have a property that's costing them property taxes year after year, that's okay. But do you know someone who fits that category? And I'm sure everybody does. So if you've answered yes to any of these questions, you need to read this now and contact me as soon as possible. Now, what if there was a way to get access to the equity in your property and put it to work and have your property paid off in full in 2 years or less, depending upon what you decide to do? Would you want more information? Well, here's the basics overview. To bring us your proposal, you bring us your proposal and property of what you need and want. We arrange for a hard money lender to provide the funds for a loan so you can get access to your equity and put it to work. For example, let's say you have a property worth $200,000 and it has $120,000 in accessible equity. The hard money lender provides the $120,000. You need $20,000 to take care of some credit card bills and some overdue personal loans. You deposit the balance of $100,000 into a well-funded, completely solvent private bank, and you receive a 1-year bank contract on your funds, and at the end of 1 year, you get your money back plus 10% interest. Now, you can take your $110,000, or you can take just $10,000 and deposit your $100K for another year bank contract. And you can do this as many times as you want. It gets better. The private investment bank will provide you with documentary funds worth 250% of what your deposit was. So in this example, you would have $250,000 in documentary funds to work with. You can pay off your $100,000 loan. You could buy another house and pay for it in full. You could pay off all your debts. You could take your $250,000 in documentary funds, follow the protocols, and do another private investment bank deposit. You could do a lot of things. Agreed? But you say you don't know what DFs are. Well, we'll teach you and show you how to do what you can do with them. It gets better. So you'll now have a $100,000 loan to make monthly payments on for as long as it takes to pay off the $100,000 hard money loan. We have the ability to place a unique operating computer, not for your use, on your property, and we will pay you to take care of it and give you enough documentary funds to pay for your monthly loan expenses and pay you for keeping the computer on and safe from harm. For example, you now have $1,000 a month loan payment. You decide to do the caretaking of the LMF computer. You will be provided with $1,000 a month for 12 months. That's $12,000 for the year. This covers your monthly payments. Plus another $1,000 a month for your caretaking services. 1,000 times 12 is $12,000, totaling $24,000 for the year, paid up front in documentary funds so you can cover all your monthly loan expenses and get paid to do it. If this don't light your fire, your wood's wet. Now, send me your contact info so we can talk about your needs and wants and get started. You started to making money instead of spending money. Stop foreclosure, create multiple income streams, and learn to do what successful, wealthy people do. Put your email in there, send it out to anybody and everybody that you know. Okay? So let's stop the screen share. Well, I am so very sorry that we've had problems showing the screen share today. Let's see if we've got some questions in our chat. Where's the chat? There is no chat. My goodness. Well, all right. My sincere apologies. We'll keep working on this, and we'll get it perfected. Tuesday, we're going to continue this vein of thought. We're going to show you the second part of the follow-up for the letter that I just read to you that you can send out as a capture page. Those of you that have web skills, great. If not, just send it out as an email. And let's get out there and talk to people. And please take the time over the weekend to go through those questions, and they're on the website, and the link will be up there, and you can listen to it again at least. And I guess from time to time you'll see my talking head, and whatever else you see, I don't know. My sincere apologies again. I'll get this figured out, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Great success, and God bless. Bye now.